Today, I am doing a roller coaster element tier list, and this will include like normal airtime, inversions, all that type of stuff. It's all the different type of elements that you could think of, no matter what it actually is, and I will be putting it into this tier list, which is in the tiers of S being really good, A being also pretty good, B being slightly above average, C slightly below average, D I wouldn't really want to be on these elements, and F being, I don't think coasters should even have these. But all of these elements I have been on, and I did make this tier list, so tell me anything that I missed, because there are a ton of elements that I maybe did miss, but I just picked these out of the ones that I remember I have done, and I would want to throw on this tier list. But we are going to start off with a S-bend, or a S-turn. I think this is C tier. They're pretty good on the bat. I think that like going from side to side and being turned is pretty cool. And I don't really see these much on coasters, but they are pretty good if you do them well, but putting it in C. Next up is a helix. I'm gonna put it B. I know this might seem low, but I'm not a huge fan of intensity. I like intensity, but I'm not someone that likes uber intensity, so that's why it's a little low. But overall, it is pretty good if you sprinkle it in pretty well. Next is the Mosasaurus roll. I was trying to leave off elements that only have like one or two in the world, but I had to put the Mosasaurus roll on the list just because it's so iconic and so good, and it's going straight into S tier. You feel like you're going to be flung into the water, and the airtime is crazy. It's just amazing. Next up is Maverick Stango Dives. These are going in A tier. These are definitely really good, really whippy. Some of the whippiest elements that I've been on. You're getting thrown from side to side so fast that you could honestly get whiplash. It's actually crazy. But I am not a huge fan of like whippiness and that type of stuff. So that's why I don't have it in like S tier, but it's still really good. Next up is a dive loop. We're going in C tier. I think that dive loops are a alright inversion. It's kind of just to turn the train around. I think that if dive loops have like a good amount of hang time, they can be good, but a standard B&M dive loop is kind of meh. Next up is a speed hill. I think that speed hills are S. I'm gonna put an S. I might move it down later, but these are really good. It's like a normal airtime hill, but instead of like going up, you're just like thrown right into the airtime. So it's like a quick pop of like pretty intense airtime. And depending on the speed hill, like Orion's speed hill, it could be sustained pretty well. And like the one here on that picture, Mako's, is also really good. So I'm gonna put it in S, might move it down later, but we'll see. Next up is a Cobra roll. I've been on a couple of these. I think they're mid. I think that some of them are really good, some of them really bad. Like Invertigo's is not very good. Raptors is pretty solid, and Hulk's is pretty good. But there is a chance for headbanging, which is not good a lot of the time. But they are pretty intense, so I'll put it in B. Next up, Zero G roll. Going in A tier. I think that these are really good. I think that a good Zero G roll is a very good inversion. Like Raptors is pretty good. Banshees is always kind of solid. It is a little slow sometimes. Like a slow Zero G roll is not the best, but one that is very whippy is very good. Next up is a wave turn. I'ma go C tier. I've been on a handful of these. I've been on like Orion's, which doesn't give any airtime, but being up 200 feet is pretty cool. And Steel Vengeance has a couple thrown in. They aren't very sustained, but it is cool, like sideways airtime. But it's like it's like a quick pop, and I'm okay with quick pops, but I prefer sustained, so that's why it's so low. Next up is very fast-paced turns. I think these are C tier. No, yeah, I'm gonna go B. I think these are very good. I think the snap from left to right, like on Maverick, is really good. And there are some other coasters that have like similar elements where you're getting like whipped to the side very quickly. But it's definitely not like my favorite, but they're still pretty solid. Okay, next up is a top hat. I'm gonna go... God, do I go A or S? It's one of these two, at least. I think that a very good top hat is S. Oh my god, I wish there was like an A+. I'm gonna go A. I really want to put it in S. I don't know if it is S tier. I think it's definitely worthy of S, but I'm gonna leave it there for now. If S tier doesn't have enough elements in it, I'll consider putting it S tier, because they are very good. Like, Velocicoaster's top hat is really good. I've heard that Top Thrill 2's top hat is really good, but also a lame top hat is also like a C tier element, but I think overall top hats are very good. Next up is a just standard turn. I don't think these are bad. I don't think they're very good most of the time. I think like a normal turn isn't very good, but it's not like painful most of the time. But a very good turn where it's like intense, positive G's, like Intimidator 305's first turn, then maybe I could bump it up, but most turns are just like standard and they're not very good. Next up is a double up. I think that a double up is a B tier, especially like Steel Vengeance, where like you like get like a quick pop of ejector, and then you get another quick pop of ejector. But also, I know it's like the one in Area Force 1 where you get like a quick pop of airtime, and then you go over like a normal hill. I think those could be A. But the only double ups that I've really been on are like Steel Vengeance, and Steel Vengeance doesn't have like its double ups. Usually it's like a double up into another element, and the only other double up goes straight into a mid course. I haven't been on one that has a like sustained airtime hill, but I think B tier is a solid placement for it. Speaking of a double up, a double down. I think that a double down is on the exact same level. It's just a double up, but reverse. And I could repeat myself by stating everything I just said for the double up, but it's basically just a double up, but in reverse, so that's why they're like in the exact same spot. Next up is the horseshoe roll. I'm gonna go B. It's just like two 0G rolls with like a turn in the middle, and you might be asking, why isn't it A tier? I don't quite know. I just feel that the horseshoe roll just isn't as good, because it's like a corkscrew 0G roll hybrid. So it's like, it takes a little bit of each to make it, but it's not as good as a normal 0G roll, but there are two of them. And I think these are wildly overhated, because people say that this is the dead spot of the ride, when it's two good inversions, so it's not a dead spot. So I'm gonna put it at B. Next up is a standard turnaround. I'm gonna go D tier. These are usually not very exciting. They're just a turnaround. They're just a means of turning the train around, so nothing special here. Next up is a above the track corkscrew. It's going straight to F. I'm sorry. I've only been on arrows that do these, but they're not good. I would much rather have a below the track corkscrew, because below the track is just way more whippy compared to these being painful. So as I say that, next up is the inverted corkscrew, which I will put in B tier. These can be very whippy. These can be very fun. Like Raptor's final two corkscrews are pretty good. Banshee does not have any corkscrews, but I think the Raptor ones are pretty good. Next up is a outer bank hill. These are going in A. I know people might put it in S tier, but I don't think it's quite S tier. I don't think it's quite up there. I'd definitely rather have a speed hill, but Steel Vengeance's outer bank are really good. All the outer banks on like those types of ejector-like rides, mainly like RMCs, are obviously very good. And I don't know if I'd put it in S, maybe later, but for now, it's an A. Next up is a 0G stall. I think this is another A tier. I've only been on Velocicoaster's stall, and Velocicoaster does have a good stall, but compared to like Area Force 1 or all the RMC stalls, it's definitely not as good. So I can't quite put it in S tier just because I haven't been on those attractions, but the one that I have been on is still pretty good. Next up is a wing over drop. I will put this in B. This is a very good type of drop. I like it how in the front you can get hang time, and in the back you can get whipped over, and overall, pretty good. Alright, next S tier. These are launches. I know it's a mock LSM in the picture, but I'm just putting all launches together, which I've been on a handful of launches like Velocicoaster, Maverick. They're all very fun, and you can't go wrong with a good launch. Another F tier is going to be the Immelman. It's just a dive loop, but worse. I've not been on a good Immelman, because at least the dive loop can have good hang time. Immelmans almost never have hang time. Again, I know it's just to turn the train around, but I'd prefer not to be on an Immelman just because it's kind of boring. Next up in the A tier, the Pretzel Loop. This is a very intense moment. Probably the most intense element on the list. Maybe the Helix, but these are just very intense. And being on a flying coaster and laying down is super cool. It's like 6 seconds of insane positive Gs. Honestly, very good element for a flying coaster, and I love it very much. Another S tier, airtime hills. These are so good. Like, you could have huge hills, you could have small hills, and I know I already have the speed hill, but you can have like small bunny hills at the end. You could have big airtime hills like on B&M Hypers. These are just really good, versatile elements that you could plop into any ride and it would make the coaster better. Next up is like an inline twist slash like heartline roll. I would definitely put it A. I think having this type of element can have good hang time. I really like the one on Banshee, just having a ton of hang time, and you can't go wrong with just like a standard roll. Like, I would say that like Gatekeeper's like last inversion, where it's just like slowly going past the keyholes, is really good too. Overall, I really like these. Next up, a standard vertical loop. I'm gonna go C tier. I'm gonna go C, yeah. I'm gonna go C. I think that these can be intense. I think they can have hang time. But overall, it's not the most unique element, so that's why it is at C. Alright, next up is a hammerhead turnaround. These are very similar to, like, normal turnarounds, but just B&M does them more for their hypers. And I would say they're maybe like a little bit more interesting than the average turnaround. But overall, it's like not much better. It's like pretty similar. Another S tier. I'm gonna put this at top of S tier. That is a S tier easily. You could have a short first drop with insane airtime like Maverick. You could have a huge one like Millennium Force Orion that just has airtime for days. You can never go wrong with a good first drop to start the ride, and no matter what first drop, they're almost all going to be good. Next up is a twisted airtime hill. I think I'm going to go top of S tier. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should rearrange this a little bit. Okay, I'm good. Twisted airtime hills are like normal airtime hills, but you just twist another way, which can be very fun, going from one direction, getting airtime and being yanked to the other, which is really good. But the only thing is that there can be slow twisted hills, which are kind of boring, but ones that are like fast paced are really good. Okay, next is a overbank. I'm gonna go F tier. I'm gonna go F tier just because these are usually not very fun. Like, if you have like a Millennium Force type overbank where it's pretty intense, then I'm cool with it. But if you have like a normal overbank, like on the one that you see on Pipeline, it's just so boring. Like, it's honestly like one of the, like, that and the Immelman are like the worst ways and the most ununique way to turn around the train. And I honestly don't really enjoy just like standard overbanks. Next up is a vertical spike. I'm gonna go A right before the stall. I think these are really good. I've only been on one spike on Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, And the other one I haven't been on, but I should be on, Top Thrill 2. I've heard the Top Thrill 2 one is really good, and ones like Pantheon are really good, but I've only been on the Hagrid's one, and the Hagrid's one is still really good. But overall, I think the vertical spike is pretty fun, and I wish I could just be on Top Thrill 2s. The last element on the list is a inclined vertical loop. It's like a normal vertical loop, but slightly worse. I've been on one of these, being on Rougarou. These aren't very intense. I've heard that they could be intense. I know the one on the new B&M that just got added to Dorney Park, I've heard is kind of solid, but it's like a normal vertical loop, but just slightly worse. And that was my list of all roller coaster elements that I could think of and I've actually been on. But overall, I think I did pretty well. I don't think I would really change anything about my list. I like my list and where it stands. So I'm gonna leave it as what it is. But comment down below any element that I may have forgot of, because I probably forgot of an element and I could add it to this tier list. But other than that, have a great day.